Hi everyone, and greetings from the United Kingdom. So my name's John Hynes and I work as a Research Services Coordinator at the University of Manchester Library. I'll explain more about how our library is structured for you shortly. So thank you very much for asking me to speak to you all in Taiwan today, and I'm really sorry we can't be there in person. Would have been nice to visit. I'm going to be talking to you today about some of the ways we've used Scopus and SciVal to support strategic initiatives that are currently taking place at the University of Manchester. So I'm sure Manchester is not alone in this, but demonstrating impact against the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, has become a key part of the Manchester vision and a number of our strategic aims and projects. SDGs increasingly inform elements of our research activity, teaching and learning, public engagement activities, and responsible campus operations. For this project, we've been asked to provide assistance on the research side. Now, it's important to say here that the library isn't leading on this, but we're very much seen as a valuable partner in taking the work forward. And this is something we obviously want to do a lot more of as a library. Anytime we can use our resources and expertise to support wider activity across the university is a hugely important part of who we are as a library. Again, I'm sure we're not alone in that either. I'll try and show you today how both Scopus and SciVal have played a big part in us being able to do this successfully. My contact details are at the end of the presentation if you have any questions for us. So some very brief context around our working environment. I'll try and keep this brief. I've worked in academic libraries for over 20 years, and one thing I've learned is that all institutions face their own set of circumstances and challenges that can make me saying that, you know, this is the right way to do this is a bit silly, really. But as you can see here, Manchester is a very large university, certainly for the UK anyway, and the library we all work for reflects that. So we're well resourced, and we have been able to call on other members of the library team, so technical staff in some cases, to help with some of this work. So we are quite lucky there. I also remember the Elsevier team did provide us with some support in the initial stages of the project as well. So I'll say thank you to them as well. So our library moved to what we call a functional model 10 years ago. So we used to have subject librarians, but now we have functional teams, one of which is our research services team. That's the team I work for, which is now very well established. So we provide extensive support for open research, research data management, and bibliometrics, amongst many other things. So there are 4 of us who work on the research metrics side, though 3 of us do help out with the other services as well. Now, 3 of us, including me, actually, are very new to the field of bibliometrics. I was a teaching and learning focused librarian for the last 10 years, so it's been a very steep learning curve. One thing that was helpful to us was to take part in the Scopus and SciVal certification programs. These gave us a good idea of some of the ways these databases can help with the types of question we are commonly asked. The metrics team do routine tasks like provide data for the university APR, support with our research excellence framework and general inquiries, but we are also asked to support with larger strategic pieces of work whenever they involve tasks such as benchmarking or providing evidence that demonstrates impact in some way. So this slide should give you some idea of the main things that we do in the research metrics team. This is not a complete guide, as every week and month are different working on the service. So a lot of the work is very specialist and requires a lot of focused work to get it right. So a key part of working on the service is that we are very aware that a lot of the data we provide can be used to guide decision-making processes across the university. For this reason, we take our responsibilities as signatories and supporters of the DORA Declaration on Research Assessment very seriously, and we use 5 key principles to underpin our work. I'll provide some further information on this on the next slide. So things we do would be provide guidance to individual users who might be looking to better understand or show evidence of the impact their research has had. A lot of our work is done to support other parts of the university that need information and data to support their decision-making processes, to attract research funding, or to conduct research assessment exercises. We contribute data to the annual performance review, as I said earlier, and we're often asked to support individual schools, so like the School of Physics would be an example, with benchmarking exercises or simple questions such as what percentage of our papers have international collaboration. We're also often asked to support with large strategic university-wide projects like the SDG work you'll be hearing about shortly. We create training materials to support the above, and there's some examples of these provided at the end of the slide deck. Data analysis and expertise in programming languages such as Python can help us with automating tasks, and Power BI, which we'll see later, helps us with visualization. These are also an important part of what we offer. Now, these skills do take time to develop, and many of us in the team, including me, are still learning. As I mentioned in the last slide, we are keen supporters of the movement to use quantitative metrics more responsibly here at Manchester. So the following principles, adapted from the Metric Tide report, are the ones we stick to as closely as possible. All of these are important, but the robustness of the data, so we can rely on it, and transparency, so that others can clearly see how and why we have presented particular data in a particular way, were of key importance to our work on the Healthy Futures project. So the Healthy Futures initiative is actually one of what the University of Manchester currently calls research challenges. These names change, and it can be hard to keep up. There's an obvious link with SDG 3, good health and well-being, and SDG 10, reduced inequality. And things will probably continue to move around on our website a fair bit over the next 12 months as the strategies and names evolve. The overarching goal, however, is an easy one to get behind. Is there a way in which we can use the research and resources of the university to begin to tackle health inequality, which we have a lot of in Greater Manchester? If you look at the heart disease figures in the region, for example, and the contrasts, depending on which part of Manchester you live in, they are not great. But there's also a recognition that this isn't just a local problem. It sounds like a really good thing to be working on if you are a researcher in that field who wants to be making a difference. So the group is still just getting started, really. And one of the first things the project working group was eager to do was to get a better understanding of research into health inequality at the university. So who is doing it? Where are they doing it? And could we look at joining up any isolated pockets of great research? The size of the institution is an explanation for a lot of this. But if we look at some of the things they would like to get funding for, it could make a really big difference. You know, I, for one, really like the idea of getting the local community more involved. It's something that is talked about a lot, and it will be good to see some positive steps taken here in the near future. Okay, so what was the role of the research metrics team in this project, and what did they want from us? So there's a predictable but valuable role for us here, I think, in the initial setup stages of the project. And this, of course, is why I'm talking to you today, as we wouldn't have been able to do these things without our Scopus and SciVal subscriptions. So what did we do? We split this work into two main stages. The benchmarking element, which we've been asked to do, was all about helping the group understand where Manchester sits with all this research. There are lots of other big, powerful universities out there doing great work as well, so where do we fit? The mapping was much more difficult, mainly because research into health inequality cuts across so many different disciplines. It's as valid a question for the sociologist or economist as it is for the School of Nursing. So do these people talk to each other? Do they know things that might help each other out? We would like to think so, but anecdotally, we know that this is something the university needs to get better at. The first task was not straightforward. To create a research query that required all the different elements that the group was interested in, we had to create a very complex strategy. So we left the selection of the keywords and phrases, so you can see some of those on the screen, in the hands of the working group as it is their project, though we did provide them with some resources that had been produced by our teaching and learning team on searching systematically. What we did do was provide support with getting this all to work in Scopus, and that was not a straightforward task. And we needed to run multiple searches and check over the results over a period of few weeks. There were some gentle suggestions on refinements from our side, and we did also speak with Elsevier about this just to check it was working correctly. Well, this was mainly the work of our academic colleagues. Once we were happy with the results, the next step was obviously to begin analysing this in SciVal. For the benchmarking analysis, we created a large publication set based on the results from the search query you just saw. These were limited to the 2017-2021 articles and by the affiliation ID for the institutions the working group were interested in. Now, there were 10 of those in total. So what you can see from this slide is even just from the very basic SciVal information, it's quite obvious that it's not just us who are becoming more interested in this area of research because the number of publications is growing year on year. Here's the overview for our University of Manchester publication set. Now, the number of authors is clearly wrong there and highlighted to us some of the refinements we would need to make for the mapping exercise, which I'll come on to shortly. However, even at this stage, it was useful to share these early impressions with the working group. So apologies, I've chosen possibly the wrong image here, but things like the publication share by subject area donuts were already giving us indications of findings that would be useful to the working group. It's not just people in medicine who are working on this stuff. And there's lots of different activity going on into research into health inequality across the whole of the University of Manchester. Thanks to SciVal, we were able to produce a comprehensive benchmarking report using the data and the reporting module. Once we'd created individual publication sets for the 10 universities we were interested in. So this chart represents pretty much what we saw across the board. The Manchester line is the purple line, by the way. So we're doing okay, but there's definitely room for improvements. There are other institutions doing much more research than we are. But the group did appreciate the many different charts and graphs we were able to create within that module. The variety of the analysis also allowed us to highlight some good news stories to improve morale. So we were doing very well on national and corporate collaboration, for example. For the mapping activity, what we really wanted to do was to create something that would be easy for the working group to navigate and refer back to throughout the project without needing to check with the library all the time. Lots and lots of data is of course very important, but the reality for a lot of our academics and those on the project group is that these sort of tasks have to compete with a huge variety of demands. Any time spent struggling to understand axes and formulas or jargon is time that could be better spent on the actual concerns themselves, because they are huge. The bottom line is that we were worried all we might be able to provide the working group with was a very, very large spreadsheet. We wanted to avoid this if possible and make this a more positive experience for those academics. Of course, we also needed to make sure that our spreadsheet was as accurate as possible to begin with. This involved a lot of cross-referencing of our original search query. Publications by University of Manchester researchers were identified by searching Scopus for researcher profiles for just over 100 University of Manchester researchers, and these had been suggested by the project group themselves because they knew these people were working on health inequality research. What we also did was use a Python script to flag all the publications in Scopus, which included a University of Manchester affiliation for at least one of the co-authors. So you can see in the Boolean diagram here what we ended up with for the mapping exercise. The publications in the spreadsheet, which underlie the Power BI analysis you'll see shortly, were those in sections A, B, and C of the diagram. It was then necessary to return to SciVal and create a publication set based on our spreadsheet to allow us to capture the more detailed citation information and also get some most out of the features our subscription provides. We'd already realized that we might be able to tackle some of the challenges we had been set relating to internal collaboration by making use of the topics and the topic clusters feature. Helpfully, SciVal allowed us to export a lot of this information into a master spreadsheet, which would then form the bedrock of the analysis for the project group. The spreadsheet that we created contains a huge amount of columns of bibliographic information. It's all potentially very, very useful, but it didn't really tick the box of allowing the working group to quickly and easily identify trends or to spot collaboration opportunities. Microsoft Power BI opened up many new possibilities to allow us to share this data more effectively. So this diagram may look a bit messy, but the options that are available to quickly select filters and categories have proved really popular with the working group and allows people to quickly see what is going on with a particular school, a particular researcher, but more importantly, it gives us detail on topics and clusters for publications. You can see an example here of how it's been used, and this has been really, really popular. The topic and cluster lookup function can be used to scan through available topics and clusters. Once one has been identified, then the working group can use the decomposition tree to do a much deeper analysis into the topic or cluster. And this identifies researchers who have published in a particular area. So in this case, we've used the decomposition tree to spot that we do have some academics in the Faculty of Humanities who are researching into the topic of frailty. So it's easy to see how the tool could quickly and easily be used to spot collaboration opportunities. We have more researchers in our Faculty of Biology, Medicine and Health looking into frailty, and we would expect that. But there's an opportunity here for them to form smaller cross-disciplinary groups with those humanities researchers who are also looking at frailty. So this is kind of as far as we have got at the moment. We're still in the process of collecting feedback from the working group, who do tend to come back to us with more questions and more suggestions after every meeting. But our hope is to replicate this approach for all the other SDG related projects across the university. It's definitely been a challenge, and we are also currently working on a similar set for research into artificial intelligence. We're definitely learning as we're going, but it's felt a very good way for us to be using the bibliographic data in a responsible way that benefits the institution. And it's not just about saying we're doing really well, it's actually about us trying to improve collaboration across the campus and to get people working together and talking to each other. So thank you very much for listening to me this morning. Just to finish off, there are some examples here of some training resources that we've created, so please do go and have a look at those if you're interested. We've also got a lot of material currently in development, so please do check our website through 2023, as I'm sure there'll be a lot of information coming, newly available as we go through the year. If you do have any questions about any of the content today, then please do get in touch with me, and I've put my email there on the slides, and I'm quite happy to answer any questions if I can. And I wish you all the very best from the United Kingdom. Thank you very much for listening.